The morning everything changed. My mom's call hit my phone at 6:52 in the morning and I let it ring. The drainage tube pinned to my left side ached every time I shifted, so I made a deal with myself to stop shifting. The phone buzzed twice more and went quiet. 3 minutes later, my sister called. I let that one ring too. When her call died out, I reached for my prescription bottle, then pulled my hand back. I needed my head completely clear. Whatever was coming next was going to require every bit of focus I had left. I picked up the phone with my right hand. My left arm still couldn't rise above my chest without a sharp jolt of pain, so I kept it pressed there like a broken wing while I scrolled with my thumb. I stopped on a name I had not dialed in 13 years. Susan Hartwell. State and family law attorney. She had handled my grandmother's estate back when I was wrapping up my MBA, back when the world still felt like it was just getting started. She used to send me a cream-colored holiday card every December for a solid decade, her name printed in navy at the bottom, and I always sent one back. Those cards had stopped a few years ago. Mine went first. The phone rang once. "Rachel Mercer," she said, and the way she said it, like she was both asking a question and already sitting on the answer, hit me somewhere deep in my chest that had nothing to do with surgery. "Susan. I'm sorry to call like this. Don't apologize. What is it?" I told her what I knew. My dad had served divorce papers on my mom at the crack of dawn. The lake cabin every weekend for months. The leather folder my sister Diane had brought to Easter dinner. The checks my mom had signed at the kitchen sink without reading a single word on them. I told Susan about my surgery. About what I could and couldn't do right now, which was basically nothing on the left side and precious little everywhere else. She let me finish. Complete silence on her end. The kind that isn't empty but full, the kind a sharp listener uses like an actual tool. When I was done, she said, "Rachel, once I start pulling your father's financials, there's no putting that back. You sure you want to know everything?" I looked down at the bandaging on my chest. The surgical site throbbed with my heartbeat like it was reminding me it was still there. "Pull it. I need it by Wednesday. Sooner than that. I'll call you this afternoon." She said she would. And she was gone. Before I take you back to where this whole thing started, if this story is hitting close to home already, hit that subscribe button and tap the like. It genuinely helps this reach other women who might be sitting in their own version of this moment right now, wondering what is happening to their family. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one, and I mean that. Okay. Let me take you back 6 weeks. Easter Sunday. My parents' house in Maple Ridge, Ohio, about 55 minutes from where I live in Westfield. Far enough that nobody expects you to show up on a random Tuesday. Close enough that there is absolutely no acceptable reason to skip a holiday. I was 43 years old. Senior project manager at a mid-sized software company called NovaTrack Systems, going on 9 years. I had a husband named Michael and a 16-year-old daughter named Emma who had recently developed the specific teenage talent of making me feel like the least interesting person in any room. My diagnosis was 2 weeks old that Easter. I had told my parents the week before. My dad went very quiet, the way fathers do when they don't have the words for something. Mom cried and then immediately started asking practical questions about surgery dates, which is just how she handles fear. I had not yet told my sister Diane. I kept telling myself I would tell her at Easter in person. In a quieter corner of my mind, I also kept telling myself I didn't want to. Diane lived 4 blocks from my parents. She and her husband Kevin had 2 boys, Jake 12 and Connor 9. Kevin ran a home renovation company that Diane always described as going through a transition, which I had come to understand meant something different every 6 months. Diane had a way of carrying that weight into every family gathering, like she needed everyone in the room to understand that her problems were the most complicated problems anyone was dealing with. That Easter, she brought a leather folder. Mom had the table set by 10. Good china, linen napkins ironed twice a year like a religious ritual. By noon when we arrived, the honey-glazed ham was resting under a dish towel and the whole house smelled like brown sugar, cloves, and my entire childhood. Dad was on the back porch. He came in and kissed me on the side of the head and asked how I was holding up. I said fine. He nodded once, quick and final, and went back outside. He had his phone in his hand. I noticed it. I had been noticing it a lot lately. Diane and Kevin arrived at 12:40 with the boys. Jake was at the age where every sentence came out as a complaint. Connor was at the age where he announced everything at full volume. They were, in other words, 12 and 9. Diane had brought a sweet potato casserole and the leather folder, which she quietly set near the coffee maker and didn't mention for the entire meal. Lunch went the way lunch always went. Mom apologized for the rolls. Dad said they were perfect. Kevin told a long story about a county permit situation. Emma texted under the table until I looked at her. I had quietly decided by the main course that I was not going to tell Diane about the diagnosis that day. She had her folder and her complicated husband and her 2 loud boys. I did not have the room for her reaction. Dad slipped away during dessert. Said he was checking on the garage. Took his phone. I noticed. I filed it. After dessert, Mom and I cleared the table the way we had since I was 8. She washed, I rinsed. The grease from the ham pan clung stubbornly and Mom worked at it with her thumbnail under the running water. Neither of us said much. That particular silence had always been its own language between us. Diane came in at the end with the folder. Mom, while I've got you, quick thing. Mom dried her hands on her apron. It's the bank paperwork they kept calling about, Diane said, opening the folder on the counter. Just to simplify things so they stop calling Dad about every single form. Completely routine. All right, sweetheart. Don't worry about reading through all of it. Same stuff you've agreed to before, just cleaner language. Mom signed where Diane pointed. Slow, careful loops on the G of Gloria. A second sheet. A third. Then 3 smaller slips came across the counter that I recognized from 8 feet away, as checks. Dad asked me to deposit these while he's up at the lake this weekend. He keeps forgetting. Mom signed those too. On the backs. Her endorsements. I was standing in the doorway holding a glass of iced tea. I heard every word. I watched my mother sign her name on the back of 3 checks in a kitchen she had stood in for 40 years. I watched my sister fold them into that leather folder with the easy, practiced motion of someone who had done this kind of thing before. 2 weeks to surgery. A tumor in my left breast and a calendar full of pre-op appointments. I told myself I did not have the bandwidth for what I was seeing. I let it pass. That decision would stay with me for exactly 1 week. We left at 5. The late April light came in long and gold. Diane was at her car, the leather folder tucked under her arm. She opened her trunk and slid it in flat on top of a bag, smooth and practiced. As she pressed the trunk closed, she looked up. Not at me. Past me at the house. A small, satisfied smile crossed her face. Kind that lives entirely on the inside and only leaks out when you think no one is watching. 2 seconds and then gone. She did not see me see it. Michael started the car. Emma was already on her phone. I turned forward and did not say a single word for the first 15 miles home. Diane was supposed to take me to my pre-op appointment. We had scheduled it a month out. She'd written it on her kitchen whiteboard in green marker, Rachel pre-op 8:45. She color-coded her commitments. She texted at 7:18. Jake's coach moved the game to 10. Kevin can't take him. I am so sorry. Can Mom go? Mom was at my front door by 7:40. Good navy coat with the wide collar she saved for church and doctor's appointments. A thermos of coffee and a paperback novel because that was what my mother always brought to waiting rooms. Not a single word about Diane. She had made a decision not to go there, and she was nothing if not disciplined about the deals she made with herself. I sat in the passenger seat and let her drive. 45 minutes. The radio was on low. My side ached when I tried to adjust my seatbelt, so I stopped adjusting. In the waiting room, she held my hand. She hadn't done that since I was 10 or 11. Her hand was thinner than I remembered. The skin over her knuckles was loose in the way it gets after decades of cold winters and hard work and raising children who don't always deserve the effort. She held it the way she had when I was small, steady, no pressure, no direction. Just there. Just her hand around mine saying, "You are not alone in this room and I am not going anywhere." We sat that way for 25 minutes. They were running behind. "Your father has been different lately," she said. She was watching the door at the end of the hallway, not me. I could hear in her voice that she had been carrying that sentence around for a long time and had finally found a quiet enough moment to set it down. "He keeps going up to the lake cabin. More than he used to. More than makes sense for a man his age who says he goes up there to fish and rest." She paused. The waiting room had one of those clocks with the ticking second hand that you only notice when nobody is talking and the silence needs something to fill it. "His phone is always face down now," she said. "It never used to be. He never used to care which way his phone was sitting." I sat with that. Clock ticked. "Mom, have you thought about talking to someone? Dorothy, maybe? Or even just a counselor?" She shook her head slowly, the way she did when she didn't want more of something she hadn't enjoyed. Slow and final and polite and not open for discussion. "I don't want to be the kind of woman who imagines things," she said. "I don't want to make a whole situation out of something that might not be a situation. Your father has been my husband for 48 years. He deserves the benefit of the doubt." I was about to say she was not imagining things, that she had never once in her life imagined things, that the proof of her own instincts was sitting right there in the room if she'd allow herself to look at it. But the door at the end of the hallway swung open and a nurse called my name and I stood up, and Mom stood with me. She walked me to the threshold. At the door, she let go of my hand and squeezed my fingers once, the way she used to do before school recitals, before swim meets, before anything that made my stomach drop when I was little. "I'll be right out here," she said. I went through the door and looked back once. She was still standing in the same spot, one hand raised to her mouth, watching me go. She looked smaller than I expected. She looked like a woman standing completely still in the middle of something that had already started moving around her. After surgery, when Michael and Mom were both in the recovery room and the painkillers had everything floating loose above my head, Mom had to go down to the parking garage to add time to the meter. She was gone about 20 minutes. Michael looked out the window at one point and saw her sitting in the driver's seat of her car, both hands on the wheel, engine off, not getting out. Just sitting. He said she was still like that when he looked a second time. He told me later that he stood at that window watching her and didn't know what to do, so he did nothing, and when she eventually came back upstairs she handed him her empty thermos and didn't say a word about where she'd been. She never mentioned the parking garage to me. She came back upstairs with a paper cup of ice chips and stayed until visiting hours ended. But Michael told me later, after we knew everything, about her sitting in that car alone with both hands on the wheel. He said it quietly, like a man passing along something he wasn't sure I needed to know but couldn't hold on to. She had been sitting there for a very long time. He didn't have to say more. I understood what my mother was doing in that car. She was doing what she'd been doing for months, sitting with something she already knew and telling herself she didn't know it yet. The night after surgery came back to me in pieces. Michael in the chair by the window. The 4-stand with 2 bags hanging. The blue hospital bracelet with my full legal name on it, Rachel and Mercer, a name I hadn't written down in years. Mom beside the bed in her navy coat with her purse in her lap, and her hand moving through my hair. She hadn't done that since I was 12. Starting at the temple toward the crown, starting over. After the 3rd or 4th pass I realized she probably didn't know she was doing it. She was somewhere else in her head, working through something I couldn't see, and her hands had simply defaulted to the oldest, most automatic thing they knew how to do. Diane had not come. She had texted at 6. Connor's running a fever, might be strep. Can't risk the hospital. She'd texted again at 7. Tell Rachel I love her. I'll come tomorrow. Mom read both texts to me out loud in that steady, neutral voice she uses when she has made a decision not to react to something. Not one word of commentary. She set the phone down and looked at the wall and went back to moving her hand through my hair. Your dad said he'd be by tomorrow morning, Mom said to the wall. He's still at the lake. Painkillers had taken that sentence and floated it somewhere just above my reach. I could see it. I couldn't get there. I closed my eyes. Mom's hand kept moving. 2 days later, they sent me home with a drainage tube, 2 prescriptions, and a small notebook to log the fluid output. Michael made me eggs every morning. Emma brought magazines from the basement with real tenderness she'd long since decided was uncool but broke out anyway when it truly mattered. The drain bulb collected fluid the color of watered-down sweet tea, and I wrote the numbers in a little notebook 3 times a day. The morning after we got home, the phone rang at 6:52. I knew before I picked up. There is a kind of knowing that lives underneath the regular thinking part of your brain. The same part that makes you slow down before a bend in a road you've never driven. Mom's voice was working very hard not to break and not quite succeeding. Rachel, your father had papers served on me at 6 this morning. There was a man at the door. I was in my bathrobe. He had an envelope. Mom, where are those papers right now? On the kitchen table. Put them in the drawer where you keep the utility bills. Right now. Don't read them again. Don't show them to anyone. Don't call anyone. Rachel, he has been my husband for 48 years. I know, Mom. Put the papers in the drawer, sit down, and don't touch your phone. I'll call you back in 1 hour. She was crying when she hung up. She was trying very hard not to be. I could hear her trying. I lay back against the pillow. The drain bulb was warm against my ribs. 3 minutes later, my sister called. Oh my God, Ratch. Mom just called me. She's completely falling apart. I've never heard her like this. She literally cannot be alone today. I have the boys, Kevin has a work thing, I literally cannot do this today. You have to take her. I'll call you back. Ratch, she cannot be by herself. I'll call you back, Diane. I did not call her back. I sat on the edge of the bed for 2 minutes with my right hand wrapped around the phone and my left arm held against my chest. Somewhere down the block a sprinkler was running. Tick, 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 tick. I scrolled to Susan Hartwell. She picked up on the first ring and said my name like a question and an answer in the same breath. I told her everything. Papers served at dawn. The lake cabin. The folder. The endorsed checks. My surgery. Where I was sitting and what I could and couldn't do. She let me finish. Rachel, once I pull this, we can't undo it. You sure you want everything? I looked at the bandaging on my chest. Pull it. Give me until Wednesday. I need until Wednesday myself. I'll call you this afternoon. There was a sound on the line. It might have been her writing something down. It might have been the very quiet sound of Susan Hartwell getting to work. She called at 4:15 that afternoon, right on schedule. There's something I need to tell you about that Tuesday that I hadn't expected going into it. My neighbor Brenda knocked around 11 that morning. Brenda's in her mid-60s, lives 2 houses down, and has exactly one setting. She says what she means and doesn't waste your time getting there. She set a casserole and a jar of homemade peach preserves on the counter, sat down across from me at the kitchen table, folded her hands, and said, "Before whatever's happening with your parents gets any further, I need to tell you something I should have said a long time ago." I told her to go ahead. She had seen my father at a hotel off Route 23 the previous August. Checking in with a woman, maybe 10 or 15 years younger than him, Brenda said. She had recognized my dad from a 4th of July party my parents had thrown 2 summers before, when half the neighborhood was over and he'd stood at the grill for 4 solid hours in a Buckeyes cap, holding court. She knew his face. I kept telling myself it was none of my business, Brenda said. I kept thinking, who am I to walk into somebody's family? But I'm sitting here looking at you and I know I made the wrong call. I'm sorry. I thanked her. I told her I was going to need her to write that down. She said she absolutely would, and she left the food on the counter and let herself out. I sat at the kitchen table with my right hand flat on the surface. August. A hotel off Route 23. Another piece of a shape I was beginning to see with complete clarity. Susan called at 4:15 that afternoon, right on schedule. Rachel. You're sitting down? I'm sitting down. Good. I have your father's personal checking, the joint account with your mother, his savings, 2 investment accounts, and the retirement account. 45 months of statements. Ready? Yes. In March 4 years ago, on the first business day of every single month, a wire transfer of $5,500 left your father's personal savings account. The recipient is the same every single time, a Nevada company called Blue Horizon Consulting. My assistant pulled the registration. It's a single-owner company in Clark County, Nevada. The sole owner is a woman named Monica Reyes. Henderson, Nevada address. Born 1964. Do you know that name? No. Hold on to it. 45 months at $5,500 is $247,500. Your mother had no idea. But here is the part that stopped me cold. Those wire instructions were not entered from your father's own account terminal. Not from his laptop. Not from the family computer. Not from any device connected to your household. Someone else has been authorizing these transfers using full credentials, login, password, security verification from the same location 45 months in a row. My financial investigator says the device ID is consistent. Same machine every time. Susan. My dad is 73 years old. He has a flip phone. He calls the cable company once a month because he can't get his TV off the menu screen. He has never opened a banking app in his life. I know. He doesn't know his own password. I know. Someone else does. And I will know who by tomorrow morning. Don't ask anyone in your family anything in the next 18 hours. Not your mom, not your sister, not your dad. Nobody. Clear. You're going to want to. Don't. I know. 18 hours, she said. And she was gone. I sat in the recliner with a heating pad on my back until it shut itself off and the room went from gold to gray. Blue Horizon Consulting. Monica Reyes. Henderson, Nevada. $247,500 out of my father's accounts and $5,500 amounts for 45 months from a device he had never touched. Whoever set this up was not my 73-year-old father who couldn't reset his own cable box. Michael drove me to Mom's on Wednesday, 5 days after surgery. The drain fluid was down to 12 milliliters. Mom met us at the door. She had gotten thinner in 2 weeks, not in a way you'd notice if you hadn't been looking at her face your whole life. Dan's car was in the driveway. She was in the kitchen in rubber gloves, the dishwasher half-loaded and running. Laundry going in the basement. Mail sorted into 3 piles. Kevin was in the garage with Michael doing something with tools that didn't need doing. Diane guided me into a kitchen chair with a steady hand at my elbow, gently, the way you'd help someone who needed steadying. Mom put the kettle on. Her hand trembled slightly when she set it on the burner. I watched her not notice that it was trembling. Diane made tea and then motioned me into the hallway with a tilt of her chin. She's not eating, Ratch. Half a piece of toast at noon. Coffee for breakfast, pretending that counted. She kept her voice low. Kevin's company is doing layoffs. I haven't told anyone that. I haven't slept in a week. Jake asked me yesterday if I was sick. He looked so scared. Her voice cracked, just a hairline fracture. All I want is for Mom to be okay. That's genuinely all any of this is for me. She put her hand on my arm, the arm that still ached. I let it sit for 3 seconds. I was right at the edge of feeling what she wanted me to feel. And then the device ID came back to me. The same machine. The 45 transfers. The thing she wanted me to feel hit something solid inside me and stopped. I said, "I know, Diane. The way Mom says things." No reaction. No commentary. We went back to the kitchen. Mom walked us to the door at 5. The front step, she hugged me carefully on my right side, her face against my hair. "I don't know what I would do without your sister," she said. I did not answer that. As I was getting in the car, I looked back at the porch. Diane had come outside to wave us off. Her hand was settled on Mom's shoulder, not placed there recently, but resting there like it had been for some time and intended to stay. Mom waved with her free hand, smiling. The hand stayed. We pulled out of the driveway. Susan's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown that had been a savings and loan in 1930 and law offices pretty much ever since. Thursday, 6 days after surgery. Michael waited in the lobby. The elevator smelled like old paper and something I can only describe as weight. Susan's office had 2 leather chairs and a window facing a parking lot. A file was open on her desk. A phone on speaker was blinking, and a man's voice was mid-sentence when I walked in. Device ID resolves to a residential cable line. Account registered in Maplewood Heights. Cable account is in the name of Sound of Paper. Diane Riley. P.O. Box billing address. I sat very still. Susan was looking at the speakerphone. She let that sentence live in the room on its own for a full 5 seconds. "Thank you, Frank. Written summary by tonight. Encrypted. He said he would." She hung up. She turned to me. Her face didn't change. I had been afraid driving over that someone was going to make the face at me, the combination of pity and shock that I could not handle right then. Susan simply looked at me the way she looked at everything. Information was information. Her job was to work with it. She slid a folder across the desk. "This is the document your sister had your mother sign at Easter. Filed at the county recorder's office 5 days later." I opened it. 2 documents. The first, a property transfer form that would hand the house to Diane alone the day Mom died. No waiting, no legal process, she'd just take the deed straight to the courthouse. The second, a change to the family trust that removed my name entirely. I had been a 50% equal share alongside Diane. As of Easter Sunday, my name was gone. I read both pages twice. The signatures were Mom's. The slow, careful G of Gloria. The green pen from the kitchen drawer. There's a third item. She slid a single printed page across. Email messages between your father and your sister going back nearly 4 years. Obtained through the divorce filing. Your mother's attorney is in the loop and we're coordinating. Your sister Diane was your father's contact on the Nevada money from the very beginning. She set up the wire transfers. She managed the details. She has known about Monica Reyes since that situation was less than a year old. I looked at the printout. Short messages back and forth. "Dad, did you handle March? She'll notice if it's late." Handled. "Thank you, sweetheart. Monica's asking about the summer. Should I coordinate?" "Go ahead. Just don't use my email. You're the best, Dad. I've got you." I closed the folder. The leather chair was cool against the back of my neck. My left side ached in that low, steady way that had become so familiar I'd stopped noticing it except as background. Susan folded her hands. "Rachel, did your sister know about your diagnosis before your father filed?" I told her 2 weeks before he filed. She knew the surgery date. She knew my recovery timeline. She knew the medications. She knew exactly how much capacity I was going to have for the 6 weeks following the procedure. I stopped. Then I found the exact word I needed. She knew precisely when I would be least able to fight back. Susan didn't answer. She let me sit in it. "Rachel." She caught herself. I am very sorry. I didn't answer. I didn't have anything to put where the answer would have gone. I drove myself to Mom's on Saturday morning, 8 days after surgery. Slowly, seatbelt pulled out slightly from the bandaging. The drain had come out Friday. I told Mom I needed her for the weekend, that I was exhausted and Michael had a work trip and I needed someone to make her chicken soup with the egg noodles and the fresh dill. She had a bag packed in 15 minutes. Thermos, paperback, green pen in her coat pocket. I had the feeling she had been waiting to be needed. Susan was already at my kitchen table when we walked in. Mom stopped in the doorway. She looked at me. She looked at Susan. She looked back at me. Ratch. Mom, sit down, please. She sat. I made tea the way she always made it, kettle, loose leaves, the white pot with the chip in the lid. I set it on the trivet between her and Susan. Susan had 4 folders. She laid them out like she was dealing cards. She did not start with the worst one. Mrs. Caldwell, I'm going to walk you through what I found. I'll go slowly. You can stop me at any time. I'm not going to tell you what to think. Only what's in these folders. All right. She started with the wire transfers. 45 of them. Blue Horizon Consulting. Monica Riss. Henderson, Nevada. 3 years and 9 months of $5,500 withdrawals totaling $247,500. Mom listened. She did not say anything. Her hands were flat on the table. Susan moved to the second folder. The Easter documents. Property transfer. Trust change. She read the key sections aloud. Mom looked at her own signature. She touched the page with 2 fingers and did not move her hand for a moment. Susan moved to the third. The investigator's report. The device ID. Maplewood Heights. The cable account. Diane Riley. Mom did not cry. I want to be clear about that. My mother, who had cried the morning the divorce papers came, did not cry once during this entire conversation. Susan moved to the 4th folder. The email messages. When she finished, Mom sat without speaking for 2 full minutes. Kitchen clock moved. The refrigerator hummed. Then Mom said, If I sign something today, can I undo what Diane had me sign at Easter? Yes. Susan nodded. I can have the reversals ready for both the property transfer and the trust change in 10 minutes. You sign them here, we file Monday, and legally it's as though Easter never happened. For those 2 documents, yes. Is there anything else my daughter has done that I'll need to reverse? Susan paused for just a fraction of a second. There is a financial power of attorney on your accounts that your husband signed over to your daughter 4 years ago. Quietly. We can cancel that as well. Cancel it. Susan opened her laptop. She typed in Mom's name and the date and turned the screen. Mom read both pages all the way through. She asked one question. Susan answered it. Then Mom picked up her green pen, the one she had brought from the drawer in her own kitchen because that was the pen she used to sign important things, and she signed both pages. When she set the pen down, she looked at her hands on the table. Your sister has always wanted what wasn't hers, she said. I should have seen it. And I think I did see it for a long time. But I kept telling myself I was being unfair. That I was favoring one of you over the other because of who she chose to become. So I pushed the thought away and tried harder. She looked up at me. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry you had to be the one to bring this to me. I put my right hand over hers. My left was still slow. My right hand was enough. Susan cleared her throat gently. There needs to be a conversation with Diane. In person, with everything in front of her. So she fully understands she is being held responsible for this. When would you like to do it? Mom looked straight ahead for a moment. Next Saturday. Lunch at my house. Same as Easter. I said, I'll make sure Aunt Carol is there. Good, Mom said. That night at 11:30 my phone buzzed once. Diane. Hey, we should probably talk soon. Just the two of us. I set the phone face down. Diane came to my house on Monday, 10 days after surgery. No call ahead. I heard her car at 3 in the afternoon and recognized the familiar rattle in the driver's door. Michael was at work. Emma was at a friend's house. Mom was at choir rehearsal with Aunt Carol, who was already fully briefed and had one instruction: don't say a word until Rachel's done reading. Diane rang the doorbell. She'd had a key her whole life and had always used it. This was the first time she had ever rung the bell. I let her in and stepped back. She didn't bring food. She didn't have her purse. She walked past me into the living room, sat on the sofa, crossed her legs, and rested her folded hands on her knee. She did not look at the bandaging on my shirt. Didn't ask about the drain or the recovery or the medications. Rach, she said, I'm going to be straight with you. I have a contact at the Schwab branch on Meridian. She mentioned this week that someone has been pulling Dad's records. An attorney of record made the request. I need to know if that attorney is yours. I didn't answer. She waited. I let the silence sit between us. All right, she said. I'll take that as a yes. Listen, you just had cancer surgery. This is not the time for this. What I think you're doing is going after Dad's accounts because you're angry he left Mom and you want your share of it. I get it. But you're going to drag Mom through a financial investigation when she is more fragile than she has ever been. That is not going to be good for her. And I'm going to say one more thing, Rach. Her voice was even and rehearsed. If you keep going down this road, I'm going to have to tell Mom what you're really doing. I'm going to have to explain that you are using your illness, your own surgery, as cover to go after Dad's money. That you are taking advantage of a woman who just lost her marriage to make sure you get yours. And Mom is not coming back from that. Not at her age. So I'm asking you, as your sister, as someone who loves Mom, let this go. She stood up. She had said what she came to say. I'm not your enemy, she said at the door. I'm trying to protect her. And she let herself out. I heard the car door. The engine. Tires on the gravel. The sound of her accelerating down the street and then nothing. I sat in the armchair with my left arm aching and the book on the floor where it had slid from my lap without my noticing. For 10 days I had left open the possibility that some of what Diane had done was carelessness. That it was a woman who had been telling herself a story about her family for so long she couldn't see clearly anymore. I had kept that door open. She hadn't come through it to come clean. She had come through it to threaten me with my own mother, on my own sofa, 10 days after a surgeon had cut a piece of my body away. She had looked at my surgical dressing and decided it was something she could use. I picked up the phone. Susan picked up on the first ring. She just threatened me, I said. We move tomorrow. Done, said Susan. That night my kitchen island was a war room. Michael sat to my right. Mom sat at the kitchen table with the 8 linen napkins she'd brought from her own house, the good ones ironed twice a year. She folded them with complete focus and completely steady hands. The same fold she had used for 40 years. Aunt Carol was on the tablet propped against the fruit bowl on video. Susan was on speakerphone against the toaster. Carol is fully briefed, Susan said. She knows the sequence. She will not say a single word until you've finished reading from the folder. When you're done and Diane is looking for a way out, Carol closes it. I'll say her name, Carol confirmed from the screen. Just her name. That's my moment. Monday morning at 9, the court order files, Susan continued. Freezes the Nevada company. Freezes the wire access on your father's accounts. Freezes Monica Reyes's ability to move anything out of that company. Your father's divorce attorney is going to push back. He won't push back for long. He won't. Because I made the consequences of the other path very clear to him. He prefers to keep this civil. So do I, for your mother's sake. As for Diane, the criminal referral went to the county prosecutor's office yesterday afternoon. Elder financial abuse. Wire fraud. The DA's office will be in touch with her attorney Tuesday. Mom set down the 7th napkin and picked up the 8th without missing a beat. One more document tonight, Gloria. Last one. I promise. I got the page from Susan's folder. Mom read it all the way through, a single page canceling the financial power of attorney she had unknowingly allowed Diane to hold for 4 years. Effective immediately. Mom signed it with the green pen she had brought from her own kitchen drawer because that was the pen she signed important things with. When Susan hung up, Mom stood. She stacked all 8 napkins into a neat pile and walked them across to me. Set the table at my house tomorrow morning, she said. Blue plates, glasses with the gold rim, water pitcher on the sideboard, 8 napkins folded into triangles. I want tomorrow to look exactly like every Sunday lunch I have ever made. That's how she'll come in. She won't see it coming if it looks exactly like always. I took the napkins from her. I held them against my chest with both arms. My left had been coming up slowly each day, a little farther, a little less pain. It was enough to hold a stack of folded napkins. Mom, you don't have to be the one to ask her to leave. If it's too hard. Yes, I do, Rachel. And she went to bed. I stood in the kitchen alone with 8 iron napkins pressed to my chest and looked at my own reflection in the dark window over the sink. I drove Mom to her house at 10 the next morning. Sun out full. The dogwood by the front walk was past its peak but still holding on the way things do when they're not quite ready to let go. Susan was already inside. I had given her a key. She was in the kitchen in slacks and a gray sweater, sliding a casserole into the oven with the calm efficiency of someone's most capable aunt. That was exactly the energy the morning needed. The legal paperwork was in her bag. The sealed envelope from the prosecutor's office was on the sideboard behind the centerpiece. Table was set. Blue plates. Gold rim glasses. 8 napkins folded into triangles. Aunt Carol arrived at 11:25. Kissed Mom on the cheek, hand on my shoulder, went straight to her usual chair. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Diane pulled in at 11:55. Kevin drove her and waved through the windshield and kept going, taking the boys to a game back in 2 hours. Fine, Mom said. We were just waiting on you. Come in. She came in. Set her dish on the counter, looked around, at me, at Mom, at Carol, and I watched her read the room wrong. She thought it was just lunch. We ate. Susan stayed in the kitchen. Mom asked Diane about the boys. Diane talked about Jake's grades, Connor's new interest in drums, Kevin's situation which she described as stabilizing. Aunt Carol ate and nodded. When the plates were mostly cleared, I watched Diane set down her fork and feel her shoulders settle into what she had come to say. Mom, I've been thinking. With Dad's attorneys coming after the house through the divorce, I think we should put the property into my name temporarily, just on paper, to protect it. Once everything settles, nothing changes. You just keep living here like always. But it would be protected. Mom set down her water glass. I opened the folder. I didn't stand. I didn't raise my voice. In March 4 years ago, $5,500 left Dad's personal savings account. Transfer went to a Nevada company called Blue Horizon Consulting. The sole owner of that company is a woman named Monica Reyes, Henderson, Nevada. There have been 45 of those transfers. The total is $247,500. Diane did not move. Those transfer instructions were not entered from Dad's own account. They came from a residential cable connection in Maplewood Heights. The account is registered in your name, Diane. The device is yours. She still didn't move. The document Mom signed at Easter was a property transfer form. It would have given you this house the day after Mom died. No legal process, just a trip to the courthouse with the paperwork. The second document removed me as a 50% beneficiary from Mom's trust. Both documents have already been reversed. Mom signed the reversals last Saturday. They file Monday. Diane turned to Mom. Mom, Rachel is not in a position to make good decisions right now. She's on medication, she's been through major surgery, she is not well. Diane. It was Aunt Carol. One word. The same word she had been saying to Diane in that exact tone of voice since 1978. Carol, stay out of this, Linda, she caught herself. This is a family. Carol's eyes didn't move. I am family. Diane turned back to me. You are taking advantage of a grieving. Diane. Mom. Both hands flat on the tablecloth. Voice quiet enough that you had to stop everything else to hear it. I read the documents, she said. I read them twice. I'd like you to leave. The room held very still. Mom. I'd like you to leave my home. Diane sat for 10 seconds, looking for an exit that wasn't there. Then she stood. She picked up her napkin from her lap, folded it once lengthwise and then into a triangle, the way Mom had always taught us, and laid it beside her plate. Then she walked through the kitchen and out the back door and closed it carefully and quietly behind her. We sat. Clock made its way around 3 times. Nobody moved. Susan came out of the kitchen. Court order goes in first thing Monday. The DA's office will be in touch with her attorney Tuesday. You don't need to think about Nevada, that's your father's problem now. Thank you, Susan. Mom's voice was steady. She turned to me and put her hand over mine on the tablecloth. I want to come home with you tonight, she said. I closed my left hand around hers. I could. That was more than 2 years ago. My mother's house in Maple Ridge is still hers. She hasn't slept in it since the Saturday she asked Diane to leave. She rents it now to a young couple, newlyweds, a brand new baby, and a yellow Labrador who digs up the back garden every spring and shows absolutely no sign of stopping. The mom thinks it's the funniest thing. She drives by once a season to make sure the gutters are clean and the hydrangeas she planted the year I was born are still alive. They always are. Diane accepted a plea deal. Elder financial abuse, wire fraud. Repayment required, 3 years of probation, no jail time. The federal piece was dropped after Monica Reyes agreed to testify, which she did because my father had ended things with her and she was standing at a closed door looking for any way out she could find. $247,500 came back. Not all at once, but in monthly deposits of $5,500 on the first business day of every month. Susan set it up that way on purpose. I think she finds the poetry of it deeply satisfying. I know that I do. Every month when that deposit hits my mother's account, it is a small and precise reminder that the thing Diane built so carefully came completely apart. Diane has not contacted any of us in over a year. Her boys, Jake and Connor, send Mom a Christmas card every December. Mom writes back to each of them individually with a handwritten note and sometimes a small gift, because she has always understood the difference between holding someone responsible for what they did and punishing people who had nothing to do with it. Those boys didn't choose their mother. Mom is not going to let what happened between her and Diane become something Jake and Connor carry into their adult lives if she has any say in it. My father is in Henderson, Nevada now. He and Monica didn't last, which surprised nobody. He calls Mom about once a month. She doesn't pick up. She doesn't call back. She has made her peace with it in the quiet, methodical way she makes peace with things that cannot be changed. Not with speeches, not with drama, just by waking up the next morning and continuing to live her life. Mom's divorce was finalized last fall. She received half of the marital assets, the house, and a full offset for everything that had been transferred out over 4 years. Susan was, as I always knew she would be, excellent. My left arm is fully healed. I can raise it above my head now without even thinking about it, which I could not do for a long time, and which I do not take for granted even for a single day. I went back to work at Novatrack Systems 8 weeks after surgery and was genuinely glad to go. The structure of it, the deadlines, the ordinary day-to-day problems that had absolutely nothing to do with any of this. I am 2 years out from surgery. Clear scans. Every 6 months I sit in a paper gown in a small examination room and a doctor looks at the results and tells me things look good. Every time she says it, I let myself believe it a little more than I did the time before. There is something I think about sometimes. When the little output notebook turns up in a junk drawer, or when Mom passes me a folded napkin at a Sunday lunch that is now genuinely actually just a Sunday lunch with good food and nothing to be afraid of. I think about my mother sitting in that parking garage with both hands on the steering wheel. I don't know exactly what she was working through in those 20 minutes, and I have never asked her directly. But I think she already knew. I think she had known for a long time. Had felt it in the face-down phone and the too frequent lake trips and the way a man who has been your husband for 48 years starts to feel like a stranger in small, difficult-to-name ways, and she had been telling herself she was imagining it. The way women so often tell themselves they are absolutely imagining the things they are 100% right about. The morning after we knew everything, she came to my kitchen table and folded 8 linen napkins with completely steady hands. She stacked them and held them out to me and said, "Make tomorrow look exactly like always." That is the whole story of what my mother is. I am her daughter. And at 43 years old, 6 days out of surgery with a drainage tube pinned to my shirt and one arm still pressed to my chest like I was guarding whatever was left, I picked up a phone and called a woman I hadn't spoken to in 13 years. Not because I had a plan. Not because I was ready. 'Cause I had been watching my mother handle impossible things my whole life, and I understood that you do not wait until you feel ready. You pick up the phone. You say what needs to be said. And you hold on until the thing gets done. That's the whole lesson. I didn't need 100 years to learn it. Took 43.5 years and one very long, very cold October and 8 iron napkins folded into perfect triangles on a kitchen table by a woman who knew exactly what she was doing even when she didn't yet know everything she was up against. If this story meant something to you today, if any part of it found you at the right moment, I want to ask you 3 things. First, hit that like button. Takes 1 second and it tells the algorithm that this story is worth putting in front of someone else who might really need it. Second, subscribe if you haven't. These stories go up every week, and every single one of them is for the person sitting in a waiting room or a parking garage or on the edge of a bed wondering what to do next. Third, and this is the one I care about most, drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you've ever had a moment where you knew something before you were ready to know it. Tell me if you have a woman in your life who folds napkins with steady hands in the middle of something impossible. I read every comment. Every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story today, please share it. You already know who that person is.